Commander Daeho Kim stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital defense station, staring at the impossible sight before him. Hundreds of alien ships floated in formation above his planet, their hulls gleaming with colors no human had ever seen before. They had appeared 3 hours ago without warning, simply materializing in Earth's space as if they owned it. "They're hailing us again," said Dr. Minji Park, the xenobiologist who had rushed to the station when the ships arrived. She looked excited despite the tension in the air. This was humanity's first contact with alien life, and she had dreamed of this moment her entire career. Daeho nodded and activated the communication channel. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a creature that resembled a mantis standing upright, its compound eyes reflecting light in unsettling patterns. The translator device struggled for a moment before producing a voice. "I am Vedmar, speaker for the Galactic Council," the creature said. Its tone carried no warmth, no curiosity, only cold authority. "Your species has been observed. You have developed faster than light travel without council approval. This is a violation of galactic law." "Galactic law?" Daeho repeated carefully. "We didn't know there was such a thing. We've only had FTL capability for 6 months. Vedmar's head tilted in what might have been dismissal. "Ignorance is no excuse. The Council has governed this galaxy for 10,000 years. All species must submit to our authority for the greater good of galactic civilization." Minji stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. "We would be honored to open relations with the Council. Perhaps we could arrange talks. Cultural exchanges. You misunderstand." Vedmar interrupted. "This is not a negotiation. You will surrender all military vessels, all weapons research, and accept council administrators on your world. You have 48 hours to comply." The transmission ended abruptly. Daeho and Minji stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. Around them, other officers began talking at once, their voices rising in confusion and anger. "They can't be serious," said Captain Junho Lee, a fighter pilot who had been listening to the exchange, his hands clenched into fists. "They show up at our home and demand we surrender? Who do they think they are? They think they're superior," Daeho said quietly, his mind already racing through tactical scenarios. "They see us as primitives who got lucky with technology." Ambassador Hana Choi arrived an hour later, shuttling up from Earth with emergency authorization from the United Earth government. She gathered everyone in the command center, her face pale but determined. "The Council has sent the same message to every nation on Earth," she said. "They want complete submission. Our military dissolved, our sovereignty ended, our planet under their control." "What are the governments saying?" Minji asked. Hana's expression darkened. "They're divided. Some want to negotiate, hoping we can find a compromise. Others are preparing for war. But Daeho, you need to see something." She pulled up a tactical display. Daeho felt his blood run cold. The alien fleet wasn't just sitting in orbit peacefully. They were positioning themselves in a bombardment pattern, their weapons arrays already charging. "They're not waiting for negotiations," Daeho said. "They never intended to. This is a show of force, before subjugation." Junho slammed his hand on the table. "Then we fight. We don't just roll over for these things." "With what?" Hana asked, her voice breaking. "We have 70 ships capable of combat. They have hundreds, and their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Our missiles might as well be rocks." "Then we throw rocks," Junho said fiercely. "Better to die fighting than live as slaves." Minji looked devastated. "This isn't how first contact was supposed to happen. We should be learning from each other, sharing cultures and knowledge. Why are they doing this?" Daeho pulled up records from their scans of the alien fleet. "Because they can. They see a young species with valuable resources and strategic location. They've probably done this hundreds of times before. We're not people to them. We're assets to be acquired." The 48 hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Earth's governments argued and debated. Some prepared defenses, while others drafted surrender documents. The United Earth Defense Force mobilized every ship, every weapon, every soldier they had. It wouldn't be enough, but they would try. Ambassador Hanna made one last attempt at communication. Vedmar appeared again, his insectoid features showing what might have been amusement. "Your time is expired," he said. "No surrender has been received. This is unfortunate. The Council will now begin correction procedures. Resistance will result in additional casualties. Submit now and your losses will be minimized." "We are not yours to correct," Hanna said, her voice steady despite her fear. "Earth stands free." Vedmar's head tilted. "Then Earth will fall." The transmission ended. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the alien fleet opened fire. Deho watched in horror as energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking Earth's military satellites and defense stations. Explosions blossomed in the black of space like deadly flowers. The station shook as a near miss sent debris crashing against the hull. "All stations, evacuate," Deho ordered, even as he knew many wouldn't make it. "Get to the escape pods." Around Earth's orbit, human ships engaged the alien fleet. They were outmatched and outgunned, but they fought anyway. Junho led his squadron in a desperate attack run, his fighter weaving between massive alien cruisers. His missiles did little damage, but he kept firing. Minji grabbed Deho's arm as they ran for the escape pods. "They're really going to destroy us," she said, tears streaming down her face. "All because we reached for the stars." Deho helped her into a pod, then looked back at the battle raging outside. Human ships were dying, stations were exploding, and thousands of his people were already gone. But he saw something else too. He saw every human ship fighting to the last. He saw stations using their dying moments to ram alien vessels. He saw a species that refused to kneel. "They think this is over," Deho said as the escape pod launched. "They think we'll break." He watched Earth growing larger below them, its surface now marred by impact sites where the bombardment had reached the planet. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were watching their world burn. The Council expected them to surrender now, to beg for mercy. The Council didn't understand humans at all. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked humanity's home. And humanity never forgot. 3 weeks had passed since the Council's attack, and Earth was still standing. General Taewon Park studied the holographic battle map in the underground command center, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow. The Council had expected Earth to surrender within days. Instead, humanity had dug in like a stubborn weed that refused to die. "They're pushing hard on the Asian continent again," said his aide, reviewing the tactical reports. "Ground forces landed near what used to be Tokyo. They think they can break our defensive line." Taewon smiled grimly. "Let them think that. How are Engineer Han's preparations?" "Ready when you give the word, sir." In a facility buried deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, Engineer Sora Han made final adjustments to her team's latest creation. The device before her was part human engineering, part salvaged alien technology from destroyed Council ships. It shouldn't work according to conventional physics. But Sora had learned that humans had a talent for making impossible things work anyway. "Run the final test," she ordered her team. The device hummed to life, generating a field that would disrupt Council shield technology. It had taken them 2 weeks to understand how Council shields worked, and another week to find the weakness. Human scientists working around the clock, fueled by desperation and determination. The test results came back positive. Sora allowed herself a brief smile before transmitting the data to General Taewon. Humanity's weapons were crude compared to Council technology, but they were about to become much more effective. On the surface, Corporal Jiwoo Shin crouched in the ruins of a building, watching the alien soldiers advance through the destroyed city. His squad had been holding this position for 3 days, surviving on whatever they could scavenge. The aliens were taller than humans, with 4 arms and thick armor plating. They moved with confidence, expecting minimal resistance. Jiwoo signaled his squad. They had studied the aliens, learned their patrol patterns, identified weak points in their armor. The Council species had fought many wars, but they had grown comfortable with technological superiority. They didn't expect enemies who adapted and learned. The ambush was brutal and efficient. Human weapons might be weaker, but aimed at the joints and sensor clusters that Jiwoo's squad had identified, they were deadly enough. The alien patrol went down in seconds. Jiwoo's team stripped them of weapons and equipment, then disappeared into the rubble before reinforcements arrived. "Command, this is Corporal Shin," Jiwoo reported over the encrypted channel. "Patrol eliminated. Acquiring more alien tech for analysis." Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Humanity was learning, adapting, evolving its tactics with frightening speed. What the Council saw as primitive stubbornness was actually calculated resistance. Every battle taught humans more about their enemies. In the asteroid belt beyond Mars, Commander Daeho Kim commanded a fleet of modified mining ships and whatever military vessels had survived the initial assault. The Council had destroyed Earth's orbital infrastructure, but they hadn't expected humans to use the solar system itself as a weapon. "Target is approaching," his tactical officer reported. "Council supply convoy," just like the informant said. Daeho watched the convoy of alien ships move through the asteroid field, unaware they were being hunted. One of the Council's weaknesses was arrogance. They didn't believe humans could threaten them in space, so their guard was down. "All ships, execute the swarm protocol," Daeho ordered. Dozens of small human ships emerged from hiding spots among the asteroids. They weren't powerful enough to face Council warships directly, but they didn't have to be. They simply had to survive long enough to deliver their payloads. Modified missiles, armed with Engineer Sora's new shield disruption technology, streaked toward the convoy. The Council ships' shields flickered and failed. Suddenly vulnerable, the supply ships were torn apart by follow-up attacks. It wasn't a glorious victory, but it was effective. The Council ground forces would receive fewer supplies. The occupation would become harder to maintain. Back on Earth, Resistance leader Yuna Kang coordinated civilian networks through encrypted channels. The Council had expected Earth's governments to surrender, but they hadn't counted on the population itself becoming part of the fight. Yuna's people provided intelligence, sabotaged Council supply lines, and kept human forces informed of enemy movements. "We have confirmation," one of her cell leaders reported. "The Council is bringing in more ground troops. They're frustrated that we haven't broken yet." Yuna allowed herself a cold smile. "Good. Let them be frustrated. The longer this takes, the more time our scientists have to close the technology gap." She was right. In facilities around the world, human engineers were reverse engineering every piece of Council technology they could capture. Weapons, shields, communications, propulsion systems. All of it was being studied, understood, and adapted. What took the Council centuries to develop, humans were learning in weeks. The Council commanders in orbit were indeed frustrated. Vedmar reviewed reports of the occupation with growing disbelief. 30% casualties in ground forces. Supply lines constantly disrupted. Small tactical defeats adding up to a strategic nightmare. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his subordinates. "They are primitives. We have superior technology, superior numbers, superior experience." His military commander, a hulking creature named Ralcor, gestured at the tactical displays. "They adapt, Speaker. Every tactic we use, they find a counter. Every weakness we show, they exploit. They fight like we're equals, not conquered subjects." "Then we must show them they are not equals," Vedmar said coldly. "Increase orbital bombardments, target their cities." But that night, something happened that shook the Council's confidence further. A human strike force, led by General Taewon himself, infiltrated a Council forward base and destroyed it completely. They used captured Council weapons, wore stolen armor, and moved with tactics the Council had never seen before. Taiwan stood in the burning ruins of the base, holding a Council command tablet. His tech specialists were already downloading its data tactical codes, fleet positions, supply routes, intelligence that would save countless human lives. "Get this back to command," he ordered, "and leave a message for our visitors." The message was simple, written in the Council's own language on the base's wall. "We are learning." In space, Commander Daeho's fleet scored another victory, this time destroying a Council patrol group. 3 enemy ships down, at the cost of only 1 human vessel. The ratio was improving. Humans were getting better at space combat with terrifying speed. Pilot Commander Junho Lee, now leading an elite squadron, reviewed the battle data with his pilots. "They're predictable," he said. "They rely too much on their shields and weapons. They don't maneuver creatively. We can use that." His pilots nodded. They had all lost friends, family, comrades, but instead of breaking them, it had forged them into something harder, something the Council hadn't anticipated. Back in orbit, Vedmar reviewed casualty reports with growing alarm. Losses were mounting. Not catastrophic yet, but far higher than any projection. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every model, every simulation, every bit of historical data said they should have broken. But humans didn't care about models or simulations. They cared about their home, their freedom, their right to exist without masters, and they were willing to pay any price to keep those things. In her laboratory, Sora Han completed work on an even more devastating weapon. This one would let human ships penetrate Council armor, not just shields. She transmitted the specifications to the fleet immediately. Corporal Jiwoo Shin, now promoted to sergeant for his squad's accomplishments, trained new resistance fighters in urban combat. "They're stronger and have better armor," he told the recruits. "But they think like conquerors, not survivors. Use that against them." The war was far from over, but something had shifted. The Council had expected a quick conquest. Instead, they had found themselves trapped in a grinding conflict against an enemy that refused to lose. An enemy that learned from every mistake and adapted to every challenge. General Taewon Park looked at the latest intelligence reports and smiled. The Council fleet was requesting reinforcements. They were bogged down, frustrated, and starting to question their own superiority. Humanity was nowhere near winning yet, but they had achieved something perhaps more important. They had made the Galactic Council doubt. 6 months into the war, Admiral Hyunwoo Nam commanded a fleet that would have seemed impossible at the start of the conflict. Half the ships were human-built, incorporating reverse-engineered Council technology. The other half were captured Council vessels, repaired and modified by human engineers who had learned alien systems faster than anyone thought possible. "Target confirmed," his tactical officer reported. "Council military outpost in the Kepler system. 3 defensive platforms. Garrison of 2,000 soldiers. Supply depot for their regional fleet." Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. 6 months ago, attacking a Council stronghold would have been suicide. Today, it was Tuesday. "All ships, begin the assault," he ordered. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, immediately launching fighters and missiles. The Council defenders scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Human tactics had evolved beyond recognition. They hit hard, moved fast, and exploited every weakness with ruthless efficiency. The battle lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, the Council outpost was in human hands. Hyunwoo walked through the captured facility, watching his Marines secure the area. Council prisoners stared at their captors with a mixture of shock and fear. The primitives had become predators. Meanwhile, deep in Council space, Special Agent Eunji Bae moved through the shadows of an alien city. She looked human enough that her modified appearance blended in among the various species that inhabited Council worlds. Her mission was intelligence gathering, but she had discovered something far more valuable. She sat in a dingy bar, listening to aliens complain about the war with humanity. The council controlled information, but rumors spread anyway. And what Unji heard was fascinating. "They're pulling troops from the border worlds," one alien merchant muttered into his drink. His species looked reptilian, with scales that shifted color with emotion. "My homeworld's garrison was cut in half, all sent to fight the humans." "I heard the humans don't take slaves," another said, a four-armed being similar to the soldiers Jiwoo's squad had fought. "They treat prisoners according to some code of conduct. Feed them. Give them medical care." "Propaganda," a third alien scoffed. But he didn't sound convinced. Yunji filed away every word. The Council's iron grip on its member species was showing cracks. The war with humanity was exposing weaknesses that had been hidden for generations. She transmitted her findings through quantum-encrypted channels to Earth Command. Back in Earth's solar system, scientist Min Ho-yoon made a breakthrough that would change everything. He stood in his laboratory, staring at readouts that seemed impossible. "It works," he breathed. "It actually works." His team had developed a faster-than-light communication system that didn't rely on Council technology. It was purely human innovation, built on theories that the Council had dismissed as primitive. But it worked better than anything the Council had. Within days, every human ship and outpost was equipped with the new system. Suddenly, human forces could coordinate across vast distances in real time. What had been scattered resistance became a synchronized military machine. Pilot Commander So-Yun Cha tested the new system in combat almost immediately. His squadron received real-time intelligence from Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet about an incoming Council patrol. They positioned themselves perfectly, striking from an ambush that the Council never saw coming. "Splash 4 enemy fighters," Sojun reported, his voice calm despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. "No losses on our side." The engagement was recorded and transmitted across human networks. Seojun became something of a symbol. A human pilot who could defeat supposedly superior alien warriors. Morale, already strong, soared even higher. The Council was beginning to panic, though they would never admit it publicly. Vedmar sat in a strategy session with Council military leaders, reviewing losses that mounted every day. 3 more outposts fell this week, General Ralcor reported, his massive form hunched with uncharacteristic defeat. "The humans are not just defending anymore. They are attacking us. In our own territory." "How?" Vedmar demanded. "Their technology was centuries behind ours." "Was," Ralcor emphasized. "They learn faster than any species we have encountered. Every captured ship, every captured weapon, every captured computer. They study it, understand it, improve it. In 6 months, they have closed a gap that should have taken decades." Vedmar felt something he had not experienced in his long career. Doubt. "Then, we commit more resources. Overwhelming force. We have committed more resources." Another Council member spoke up. A being composed of crystalline structures that chimed when she moved. 8 of our member species are questioning why they must send their citizens to die fighting humans. They ask what threat Earth poses to them. They ask why the Council started this war. "The humans violated galactic law," Vedmar insisted. "The humans did not know galactic law existed," the crystalline being replied. "And now they fight only to survive. Several species are beginning to sympathize with them." This was Vedmar's nightmare. The Council maintained control through fear and the perception of invincibility. If member species stopped fearing the Council, the entire system could collapse. Admiral Hyunwoo pressed his advantage. He led an assault on a major Council supply hub. A fortress that had stood for 3 centuries. Human forces hit it with overwhelming firepower, using tactics the Council had never seen because humans had invented them specifically for this battle. The fortress fell in 2 days. Among the supplies captured were enough weapons and ammunition to equip 10 human fleets. More importantly, they captured detailed records of Council military operations across 3 sectors. Unji received the intelligence data and began analyzing it with her team. What they found was revolutionary. The Council was not a unified military force. It was a collection of species forced to work together, often resentfully. Supply lines were inefficient. Communication was slow. Command structure was bloated and political. The Council's strength was an illusion maintained by facing weaker enemies. Against an opponent who adapted and innovated, the whole system began breaking down. Back on Earth, engineer Sora Han supervised the production of new warships. These weren't copies of Council designs. They were hybrid vessels combining the best of both human and alien engineering, faster, more maneuverable, and armed with weapons that could punch through Council defenses. "How many can we build per month?" General Taiwan asked. Touring the shipyard. 20, Sora replied. "And that number will increase as we optimize production." Taiwan nodded approvingly. The Council started this war with hundreds of ships, but they can't replace losses as fast as we can build new ones. Time is on our side now. Taiwan. In space. Pilot Commander Seo Jun led another successful mission, destroying a Council reconnaissance squadron before they could report human fleet positions. His kill count was now the highest among human pilots, but he took no pleasure in it. Every enemy destroyed was one that wouldn't threaten his home. The turning point came when Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet encountered a Council armada guarding a critical logistics hub. It should have been an even fight, perhaps even one favoring the Council. Instead, using Minho's communication system, Hyunwoo coordinated his forces with perfect precision. Human ships moved like a single organism, each vessel supporting the others. They overwhelmed Council defenses through sheer coordination and adaptability. When the battle ended, the Council armada was destroyed. The humans had won a major fleet engagement. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. For the first time, whispers began among Council species. The humans were not just surviving, they were winning. Vedmar received reports of unrest on Council worlds. Member species were questioning the war, questioning the Council itself. Some were even calling for negotiations with Earth. The unthinkable was happening. The Council's authority was being challenged. On a liberated colony world, human soldiers provided medical care to alien civilians who had been abandoned by retreating Council forces. The aliens watched in amazement as humans, who should have been bitter enemies, treated them with compassion. "Why do you help us?" one alien elder asked Sergeant Jiwoo Shin, who was overseeing relief efforts. Jiwoo shrugged. "Because you need help. You didn't attack us. The Council did." Word spread. Humans were not conquerors. They were liberators. The narrative Vedmar had carefully constructed that humans were dangerous primitives and was falling apart. In her laboratory, Sora completed work on her most ambitious project yet, a weapon that could disable Council capital ships without destroying them. Capture, not destruction. It was a very human approach to warfare. Admiral Hyunwoo received the new weapon and immediately saw its potential. "This changes everything," he said, studying the specifications. "We can capture their fleet instead of destroying it." The war had turned. What began as a Council invasion to subjugate primitives had become a conflict where those primitives were winning. And across the galaxy, the other species were watching, wondering what would happen when the humans finally won. The Galactic Council had learned something terrifying. They thrived under pressure, growing stronger with every challenge. And the challenges were only beginning. 1 year into the war, President Kyungmi-oh stood in the rebuilt command center on Earth, reviewing reports that would have seemed like fantasy when the war began. 3 Council species had formally withdrawn from the conflict. 5 more were considering it. The Council itself was fracturing from within. "Madame President," her aide said softly, "the delegation from Rilmoth's people is here." Kyungmi nodded. The meeting she was about to have would have been unthinkable a year ago. She was about to speak with a Council military commander who had defected to humanity's side. Rilmoth entered the room, his tall frame moving with careful dignity. His species looked similar to humans in basic shape, but with luminescent skin that glowed faintly blue. He had been a Council fleet commander until 3 months ago, when he surrendered his entire battle group to Admiral Hyunwoo. President O, Rilmoth said, his voice carrying sadness. I come bearing information about why the Council truly attacked your world. Kyungmi gestured for him to sit. We assumed it was for resources or strategic position. That was part of it, Rilmoth admitted. But the real reason was fear. The Council analyzed your species when you achieved faster-than-light travel. Your rate of technological advancement terrified them. In 6 months, you went from primitive FTL to systems that rivaled ours. The Council projected that within a generation, you would surpass us. So they decided to conquer us before we became a threat, Kyungmi said bitterly. To subjugate you, yes. To limit your development, control your technology. Ensure you never became powerful enough to challenge Council authority. Rilmoth's glow dimmed with shame. My people were not alone in this decision. But we participated. We allowed the Council to attack an innocent species out of fear. Commander Daeho Kim, now a senior military advisor, stood nearby listening. He had aged a decade in the past year, his hair showing more gray, his eyes carrying the weight of battles fought and comrades lost. What changed your mind? Daeho asked. Rilmoth met his gaze. Because I saw how you fight. Not with cruelty or vengeance, but with honor. You took prisoners and treated them well. You liberated colony worlds and helped the populations instead of enslaving them. The Council told us you were dangerous primitives, but you proved to be more civilized than we were. Kyungmi stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth's scarred but healing surface. Cities were being rebuilt. The orbital infrastructure was slowly being restored. Humanity had survived, but at terrible cost. The question now, she said quietly, is what we do with our victory. What? Because they were winning. Admiral Hyunwoo's fleets controlled 3 sectors of Council space. Human forces had captured dozens of military installations. The Council's grip on its territory was collapsing as more species withdrew their support. In the war room, General Taewon Park laid out his plan for the final offensive. We can reach the Council homeworlds in 2 weeks, he said, gesturing at the holographic star map. And then what? Asked Ambassador Hana Choi, who had been working tirelessly to manage diplomatic relations with the fracturing Council species. We orbital bombard their worlds, like they did to Earth? Kill billions in revenge? They killed millions of us, Taewon said flatly. They destroyed our cities, murdered our people, all because we dared to explore space. Why should they receive mercy they never showed us? The room fell silent. It was a question everyone had been avoiding. Humanity had the power now. They could inflict the same devastation the Council had brought to Earth. Justice or vengeance, the line between them was thin. Daeho spoke carefully. I led the defense when they first attacked. I watched my people die, while the Council laughed at our primitive resistance. Part of me wants to see their worlds burn. But, Kyungmi prompted, but I also watched us capture Council soldiers and give them medical care. I saw us liberate alien colonies and help the civilians. I realized that our real strength isn't our weapons or tactics. It's that we stayed human even when fighting monsters. Dr. Minji Park, who had spent the year studying Council species and cultures, added her perspective. The Council species are not monolithic. Many were coerced into this war. Billions of innocent aliens will die if we take revenge on their homeworlds. Taewon shook his head. With respect, Doctor, those innocent aliens supported their governments when they thought the Council would win. They only question the war now that we're beating them. Maybe, Minji acknowledged. But does that make their children guilty? Their elderly? Their civilians who had no say in military decisions? Kyungmi listened to the debate, knowing the decision ultimately rested with her. As Earth's president, She would give the order one way or another. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. Admiral Hyunwoo transmitted from his flagship in Council space. Madame President, we've reached Vedmar's homeworld. We have orbital superiority. The planet is defenseless. Kyungmi looked at the tactical display showing the alien world below. Billions of beings lived there, most of whom had probably never given Earth a second thought. They had trusted their leaders to protect them, just as humans had trusted theirs. Options? She asked her advisors. Orbital bombardment, Taewon said immediately. Show them what they inflicted on us. Make an example that will prevent future attacks. Blockade, Hana suggested. Contain them, but don't attack. Force surrender through pressure, rather than destruction. Offer terms, Minji said. Conditional peace. They surrender. Face justice for war crimes. But their civilians are spared. Realmoth spoke up hesitantly. If I may, the Council species are watching Earth now, watching to see what humanity will do with victory. If you show mercy, you will win more than this war. You will win the moral authority the Council has lost. And if we show weakness, Taewon countered, other species will see us as soft. They'll attack us again in the future. Daeho stood and walked to the display, studying the alien world below. He thought of his friends who died in the initial attack. He thought of Earth's burned cities and orbital stations blown apart. He thought of all the reasons for revenge. Then he thought of the Council prisoners he had spoken with. The ones who admitted their leaders had lied to them about humanity. The ones who expressed shame at what had been done. The ones who were just soldiers following orders, like him. Admiral Hyunwoo, Daeho said slowly. Power down the bombardment arrays. Taewon stepped forward. Commander, that's not your decision to make. No, Kyungmi said quietly. But he's right. She looked at each person in the room, seeing the conflict in their faces. Humanity had been pushed to the edge of extinction. They had every right to vengeful fury. But rights weren't the same as wisdom. Open a channel to Vedmar's world, Kyungmi ordered. All frequencies, every communication device on the planet. When the channel opened, she spoke clearly. This is President Kyungmi-oh of Earth. 1 year ago, the Galactic Council attacked my world without provocation. You destroyed our cities, killed our people, and tried to enslave our species. You did this because you feared our potential. She paused, letting her words sink in across the alien world below. Today, your world is defenseless before us. We have the power to do to you what you did to us. We could burn your cities and kill your people. We could show you the same mercy you showed us, which is to say, none at all. Another pause. On the alien world, billions held their breath. But we won't, Kyungmi continued. Because we are better than that. We choose mercy, not because you deserve it, but because it's who we are. However, this mercy comes with conditions. She outlined the terms. Complete Council military disarmament. Surrender of all war criminals for trial. Reparations to Earth and other damaged worlds. And dissolution of the Council's authority over sovereign species. You have 24 hours to respond. Kyungmi concluded. Choose wisely. The galaxy is watching. The transmission ended. Taewon looked furious. They'll see this as weakness. No, Realmoth said, his glow brightening with something like hope. Kyungmi sat down heavily, suddenly exhausted. I hope you're right. Because if I'm wrong, I've just thrown away humanity's best chance at permanent security. You made the right choice, Daeho said firmly. We fought to stay human. Massacring their civilians would have made us as bad as them. 20 hours later, Vedmar himself appeared on the communication channel. The proud council speaker looked diminished, his compound eyes dim with defeat. Earth has demonstrated what the council could not, he said quietly. Strength tempered with mercy. Wisdom tempered with justice. The Council accepts your terms. We surrender. In the command center, hardened soldiers who had fought for a year felt tears streaming down their faces. Not tears of triumph, but of relief. It was over. They had won without becoming monsters. Kyungmi allowed herself one moment of weakness, her head bowing under the weight of all they had endured. Then she straightened, looking to the future. The war was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Building a galaxy where all species could coexist as equals. 2 years after the war ended, Ambassador Hana Choi walked through the halls of the newly constructed Commonwealth Assembly on neutral ground between Earth and the former Council territories. The building itself was a symbol designed by architects from 12 different species, combining aesthetic traditions from across the galaxy. She passed delegates from dozens of worlds, each species once forced into the Council's rigid hierarchy. Now they gathered as equals, or at least as close to equals as politics ever allowed. The transformation had been remarkable and often painful, but it was happening. Ambassador Choi, a familiar voice called. Rilmoth approached, his luminescent skin glowing warm blue. He now represented his homeworld in the new Commonwealth, working to rebuild relationships his people had helped destroy. The session is about to begin. Inside the assembly chamber, hundreds of delegates took their seats. At the center sat a human woman, Admiral Hyunwoo Nam, who had transitioned from military commander to peacekeeping coordinator. His job was ensuring the fragile peace held while old wounds healed. Before we address new business, Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying authority earned through combat rather than politics, we should acknowledge the progress made. 14 former Council worlds have completed disarmament verification. Reparations to Earth and other damaged worlds are ahead of schedule. War crimes trials continue, with both human and alien judges ensuring fair process. A delegate from Vedmar's species stood. His name was Kelvar, and he looked similar to Vedmar but younger, his eyes carrying shame rather than arrogance. My people wish to formally apologize again for initiating this war. We understand words cannot undo suffering, but we hope actions can begin to. Hana watched the chamber's reaction. Some species were ready to move forward. Others still carried deep resentment. Healing took time. On Earth, engineer Sora Han supervised a very different kind of project than the weapons she had designed during the war. Her team was helping rebuild infrastructure on worlds devastated by the conflict, including former Council territory. Human technology was being shared freely, a stark contrast to how the Council had hoarded knowledge. The atmospheric processors should restore breathable air to the southern continent within 6 months, she told the alien engineers working alongside her team. These aliens had once been enemies, shooting at humans from behind Council-issued weapons. Now, they collaborated on reconstruction, learning from each other. One of the alien engineers, a 4-armed being named Tolmar, worked carefully on a power distribution system. Your people share technology so freely, he said. The Council never did this. They kept knowledge restricted, ensuring we remained dependent on them. Sora smiled. Knowledge that isn't shared doesn't grow. We learned that long ago on Earth. Besides, we're all living in this galaxy together now. We might as well help each other. Young Captain Dabin Ju, who had been barely out of the academy when the war started, now commanded a Commonwealth patrol ship with a mixed crew. Humans worked alongside aliens who had once fought for the Council. It was awkward at first, but necessity built trust faster than diplomacy. Contact at 3 to 7 Mark 6, his alien sensor operator reported. She was from the same species as Vedmar, her compound eyes fixed on the displays. Pirates, attacking a civilian transport. All hands to battle stations, Dabin ordered. Let's show these pirates what the Commonwealth stands for. His mixed crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member trusting their counterparts regardless of species. They intercepted the pirates before the transport was seriously damaged, capturing the raiders without a shot fired. Precision, coordination, and overwhelming presence, very human tactics, now taught to every species in the Commonwealth fleet. President Kyungmi-oh stood in what had once been a bomb crater in Seoul but was now a memorial garden. Alien dignitaries walked beside her, paying respects to the humans who had died defending their world. Vedmar himself was there, the former council speaker now living in quiet retirement after serving his sentence for war crimes. "I watched the attack from orbit," Vedmar said quietly, his voice lacking the arrogance it once carried. "I thought your species would break within days. I could not have been more wrong." "We nearly did break," Kyungmi admitted. "There were moments I didn't think we'd survive. But humans have this stubborn refusal to accept defeat. It's both our greatest strength and, sometimes, our greatest flaw." Vedmar's compound eyes reflected the memorial's eternal flame. "The council studied hundreds of species. We thought we understood the patterns of behavior, the predictable responses to overwhelming force. But humanity showed us that some species cannot be predicted or controlled. You create new patterns. Is that why you finally agreed to true peace?" Kyungmi asked. "No," Vedmar said, turning to look at her directly. "We agreed because you showed mercy when you could have chosen revenge. That taught us more about humanity than all your military victories. You proved that strength and compassion are not opposites." Dr. Minji Park's dream of cultural exchange had finally become reality, though not in the way she had originally imagined. Universities across Earth hosted alien students, while human scholars studied on dozens of worlds. The exchange of ideas, art, and philosophy was transforming the entire galaxy. She stood in a lecture hall on an alien world, teaching xenobiology to a mixed class of species. "What makes humanity unique?" she asked her students. "Is it our adaptability? Our stubbornness? Our technology?" A student raised a tentacle-like appendage. "Your capacity for hope, Professor. The council told us you would break, that all species break eventually under sufficient pressure. But you never stopped believing you could win, even when logic said you couldn't." Minji smiled. "Hope alone didn't win the war. But it kept us fighting long enough to develop the skills and technology we needed. Hope bought us time." Kree. Commander Daeho Kim, now retired from active service, worked as an advisor to the Commonwealth Military Academy. He taught tactics and strategy to cadets from a dozen species, many of whom would have been shooting at each other just 2 years ago. "The council made a fundamental mistake," he told his class. "They assumed technology determined victory. But wars are won by adaptation, by innovation, by the willingness to learn from mistakes. Superior weapons mean nothing if you can't use them effectively." An alien cadet asked, "Is that why humanity won? Because you adapted faster?" "Partially," Daeho acknowledged, "but also because we had no choice. When survival is at stake, you either adapt or die. The council had the luxury of assuming they would win. We didn't have that luxury, so we had to be better." General Taewon Park had been the hardest to convince that peace was the right choice. He had wanted total military victory, complete destruction of council power, but even he had to admit that President Kyungmi's decision had produced results. He walked through a Commonwealth military base where human soldiers trained alongside former council troops. The integration wasn't perfect. There was still tension, still resentment on both sides. But they were trying. 2 years ago, I would have said this was impossible, he admitted to Hana Choi during her inspection visit. That we could never trust these species again. "And now?" Hana asked. Taewon watched a human sergeant helping an alien soldier correct their shooting stance. "Now I think, maybe trust isn't something you feel. It's something you build, one day at a time." In the Commonwealth Assembly, a historic vote was taking place. The former council species were voting on whether to formally accept the new charter that made all member species equal partners rather than subjects. It passed with an overwhelming majority. Hyunwoo Nam watched the vote tally with satisfaction. "This is what we fought for," he said to the assembled delegates. "Not conquest, not revenge, but the right of every species to determine their own future." Rilmoth stood to address the assembly. 2 years ago, Humanity taught the galaxy a lesson we had forgotten. That power, without wisdom, leads only to destruction. That mercy can be stronger than vengeance. That cooperation produces better results than domination. He paused, his glow brightening. My people helped start a war because we feared humanity's potential. Today, I am grateful we lost. Because in losing, we learned what we should have learned from the beginning. That diversity of thought, culture, and approach makes us all stronger. The assembly erupted in applause from dozens of species, each showing approval in their own way. Humans clapped, some aliens whistled or chimed, others created light displays or scent signals. A cacophony of celebration that would have been impossible under council rule. On Earth, in a small apartment in rebuilt Tokyo, Sergeant Jiwoo Shin shared a meal with Tolmar, the same four-armed alien who had shot at his squad during the war. They had met again during reconstruction efforts and discovered they both loved cooking. You know, Tolmar said, preparing food using all four hands with practiced skill. I thought humans were monsters when I fought you. The council said you were dangerous and unpredictable. Jiwoo laughed. We thought the same about you. Funny how propaganda works. What changed your mind? Tolmar asked. When we captured you and your squad, you expected torture or execution. Instead, we gave you medical care and food. You looked so confused. That's when I realized you weren't monsters either, just scared soldiers like us. Years from now, historians would debate the war and its aftermath. They would analyze the battles, study the tactics, question the decisions. But the real story wasn't about warfare or politics. It was about the moment when the galaxy learned that the measure of a species wasn't in how well they could destroy, but in what they chose to build. Ambassador Hana Choi stood before the Commonwealth Assembly for the closing ceremony of its second year. We stand here today, former enemies, now partners, because humanity made a choice. When we had the power to inflict suffering equal to what we endured, we chose a different path. She looked across the chamber at faces and forms from dozens of worlds. The Galactic Council learned the tough way that you cannot conquer humanity through force. But they also learned something more important, that you don't need to conquer humanity. You need only treat them with respect, and they will become your strongest allies. The assembly adjourned, and delegates mingled, discussing trade agreements, cultural programs, joint scientific missions. The kind of boring, bureaucratic work that made civilization possible. It wasn't glorious, but it was real. High above, in orbit, Commonwealth ships patrolled in mixed crews. Human pilots flew alongside aliens, protecting merchant vessels from pirates, responding to distress calls, keeping the peace. Captain Dabanju's ship passed Earth, the planet's scars slowly healing under restoration efforts. It's beautiful, his alien co-pilot said, looking at the blue-green world below. Daban smiled. Yeah, it is. And worth everything we did to protect it. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity couldn't be conquered, couldn't be broken, couldn't be forced into submission. But treat them with respect, engage with them as equals, and they would share their strength with you. The Galactic Council had learned the tough way. Never invade humanity. But more importantly, they learned that you never needed to invade them in the first place. You just needed to ask. And in asking, in cooperation, in mutual respect and shared purpose, the galaxy found something better than the Council had ever provided. Not enforced unity, but genuine partnership. Not peace through domination, but peace through understanding. It wasn't perfect. Old wounds took time to heal. But it was real. And it was growing stronger every day. The future belonged not to conquerors, but to those willing to build together. And humanity, having won the war without losing themselves in the process, was ready to build that future with anyone brave enough to stand beside them.